Welcome everyone. This material is going to be about relationships, about your nervous system in relation to other nervous systems. And we're going to be talking about different aspects of relating from the point of view of the nervous system. So this material is really for you to not only understand yourself and consolidate the knowledge about how your mind operates and the fact that it's rooted in the nervous system, but it's for you to actually have a lighter experience of everyday life. Because, internal experience is the most important and the most sort of all-encompassing aspect of how you function, right? Mental health determines everything. Nervous system determines everything. It is like your CEO. Unless you know it, you know how it operates. And as we talked about the neuroception in the course, so the ability of the nervous system to perceive everything, what the nervous system is an absolute master at is recognizing other people's states. So nervous systems communicate. That is the simplest way I can put it. Think about people you know in your life and about this friend that you meet up with, and after the meeting you feel really calm, right? After being around them and with them and talking to them and being in their sort of presence, it calms you down. And you think to yourself, wow, that's different, right? So, and also think about people who, after being with them, without actually knowing why, right, you feel triggered and you feel unsettled and you feel restless. This is because regardless of the sort of communication going on, the verbal communication is not what people say, is how they are within the nervous system. So this is going to be an absolute empowerment bomb when it comes to knowledge and when it comes to your competence with regard to how to interact with people and how to recognize where they are. For that to happen, an absolute crucial bit here is for you to know where you are. So first of all, I know it may be obvious, but I want to highlight this here, that you need to know your predominant state. You need to know where your nervous system is. Because depending on where your nervous system is, that translates directly into quality of your relationships. So if you are constantly triggered, unconsciously even, if you're constantly anxious, again, without you having awareness of this, that's going to manifest in your relationships. You won't even know, but your voice will be different to when you're calm. Your behaviors will be different. So knowing your state is absolutely crucial. Maybe in retrospect, so maybe you don't know it, you can't really register yet, because that's the most difficult bit, to know it in like the real time, because we are not taught that. We are actually primed for being disconnected from our nervous system. We are primed to be in our head. We are primed for our awareness to be outside of us. And that's actually what's very triggering for the nervous system, because you're not present, right? We're going to recap slightly the survival state. Your nervous system has a predominant state that you have been programmed to be in. So you have a predominant state, right? And if it's green, so if you calm, safe, social all the time, well, you wouldn't be watching this, right? You probably found out about the green state, about the homeostasis for the first time, that there is a flow state, that there is a green mode of the nervous system, which is where you feel safe and you are safe to connect and you can relax, right? So, and your body sort of is in flow and you can, your cognition is in flow, you can communicate or you can talk, or you don't have to talk, you can do whatever you want. So one of the ways to recognize in what state you are in is what I call responsive versus reactive. When you are in the green mode, when you learn to achieve it and you sort of become quite competent in it, and you know that in order for me to be calm and collected and peaceful, etc., I need to be doing A, B, and C, right? You know from the course, obviously, that then your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your higher thinking processes, for your executive functions, so decision making, problem solving, planning, looking into the future with hope and positivity, etc. So if you know how to achieve it, then that's absolute powerhouse. So you have a choice. There's a choice behind your response. The way in which you function in survival modes, it's very reactive. So when it comes to response and reaction, the difference is you choose your response, so there's a space in between what happens and what you do with it. So you can choose your response. You can respond or you don't. So you have a choice. You decide, oh, what, do I want to say something? Do I want to do something, etc. When you're in survival state, you don't have a choice. It's a reactive, automated set of behaviors and things you say, and emotional state as well. So if you are prone for anger, let's say, you don't have a choice. Sometimes this is the most appropriate thing when it comes to responding to your environment. Get angry and communicate this in a, contained way, obviously. But very often, I heard a lot of the times from people that I really regretted saying this, or I didn't really want to do it, but something took over me, or I really wish I did that, but I was unable to. So the answer 100% of the time is in the survival state. When you get into the survival state, you are not able to choose your response and you become very reactive. You become very reactive in an automated way. Survival state is very consistent. So you are consistently responding from the same script. Green state script is totally different to survival script. Therefore, it's very important to be able to recognize where you are. So first of all, let's go back and think about one of the principles of the nervous system. So one of the most important principles, the first, that's the priority for your nervous system, is familiarity. Your nervous system will respond to what is familiar. Not what's good for you, that's not the priority here. Your nervous system operates on the principle of that has worked in the past, so this is what I'm responding to. That could give you a lot of answers in terms of when you're dating, in terms of when you're meeting new people, right? Why is that? So you grew up in a certain set of circumstances. The first goal of the nervous system is survival, and survival is done by belonging. And where do you belong to, first of all? You belong to your first family, right? Children are very good at recognizing and working out what they need to be in order to belong, in order not to be kicked out of their family, because obviously you have no choice and that's your whole world, that's your whole planet, that's your tribe, right? So biologically speaking, evolutionary speaking, you have no context, no resources, therefore your nervous system will be like, okay, this is my mom, this is my dad, this is my extended family, these are my siblings, whatever, this is how things work, this is how life is. And it doesn't matter that there is chaos. It doesn't matter that your mother, let's say, is emotionally absent or that your father is not there. That's your normal. That's your familiar, right? So 15 years down the line, you're meeting people and your nervous system responds to that as familiarity. Oh, that feels like home. So that person who reminds your nervous system of your mother, your father, your sibling, you read them, you interpret them as, there is chemistry, or there is this familiarity about them. I feel that I've known them for so many years. Your nervous system responds to familiarity in other people. Okay? So when it comes to dating and getting to know people, that's the most important thing. And so therefore, if, for example, your nervous system is in the fight mode, which we'll call the F1, so the hustler, the wrestler, you seek novelty, you seek high intensity situations, you overcommit, you go all in when things happen. And obviously you find people who are calm, irritating and boring. This is very interesting when people tell me, oh, he's a good guy, but I find him a bit boring. Very often this is because their nervous system is in a state of dysregulation, constant dysregulation and constant stress and constant chaos. And as you know from the course, you will be seeking to release and discharge the excess energy from the system. So again, you're not the boss here, your nervous system is the boss. So you will be responding to what's familiar, right? That's the most important thing. So when you're pairing up and when you are dating, or when you are meeting new people at work, or when you're moving countries, or change neighborhoods, your nervous system is seeking familiarity, because that is what has worked in the past, and that's the script you're running, and that is the most important thing. So knowing where you are, what's your predominant state? Is it fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or you have a proclivity for depression, or you have a combination, right? Depending on the circumstances. As I keep on saying, and I hope you've heard me say in the course enough times, being depressed is very often the most appropriate response to what has happened or had happened, or sometimes your nervous system needs rest, or sometimes your nervous system is metabolizing some kind of loss, bereavement, or loss of a job, or loss of a relationship, or loss of a pet. Can be anything. So please do not ever think that being in survival state, there's something wrong with it, because it's not. It's your protective state, and knowing that, honoring that and respecting that, because your nervous system has been doing this job for you. Your body has been through an awful lot in your life. And what do? We get angry, we get irritated, and we just make things worse for ourselves. So often lack of mental health or poor mental health is a consequence of what we've been through. And I always say anxiety and depression are messengers to what has happened, and to the fact that it's time for you to actually look at your experience and pause, really, and actually understand why you are the way you are. If your nervous system had been under threat a lot of the times, emotional, psychological, physical, sexual, therefore it will respond to a certain way. As I keep on saying, it will respond by generating excess energy in your system, which is the fundamental part of anxiety, or it will respond by shutting off your resources and keeping you hiding in a hiding space and resting, so going into the mode where there's no energy in your system. As you may imagine, that sort of knowledge is a very insightful skill. You're going to be very competent when it comes to understanding where you are. And relationships the quality of your relationships can be increased, improved. And again, if your relationships are great and you're very skilled at communicating, managing relationships and emotions in the relationship, that's great. But for majority of us, that's not the reality. Okay? So knowing your predominant state is absolutely key. What that means is, if I know that I'm in a survival and my survival can look something like I'll get irritable and then I shame myself, for example. So I'm in shame and I'm in like, oh my God, I'm a therapist and I need to be this, well put together person and I need to say the right things. And I don't feel that way, because when I go into my survival, then my complexes are coming up, my insecurities are coming up. So therefore, I try not to communicate in this state, right? One of the very first things you can do for yourself is to recognize how to manage yourself first and bring yourself towards the green in order for you to actually get yourself into a space emotionally, psychologically, so address your state, right? So I know that part of being emotionally intelligent is knowing, and not 100% of the time, of course, that the way I am is my responsibility and I need to deal with that. Because relationships fall apart if we project the survival state onto ourselves. We get into arguments, conflicts, we push the responsibility, we stop becoming accountable for our state and for where we are. We get emotional, we say things that we regret, and it doesn't solve anything. If it did, that would be great, but it doesn't. It's very detrimental to relationships not to know your predominant state. Because when your body is in survival, your mind is in survival, your ego will take over. And ego, that's a completely different force in the mind, but we go by layers, right? So now we are addressing things in terms of the nervous system and how the nervous system functions in relationship to other nervous systems. One of the very good examples of that is children. How children trigger us, right? Not when they're 7 months old, but when they're 4 or 5, 7, 14, etc., right? So this is our nervous system responding to, and that could be a separate course, but that's our nervous system responding to their nervous system, because their nervous system is underdeveloped, it's developing. So it's throwing tantrums, but adults can throw tantrums too, as we know. So their nervous system is throwing tantrums and we get triggered, right? Or they say no, or they stubborn, or they disrespectful, etc., etc. So therefore, I can give you a guarantee that if you become semi-fluent, if you master 80% of the course, and it's very simple and you know it, you have it in you. It's just that about removing and unlearning the shit that we're being primed for, right? It's your wisdom. Your nervous system is programmed for this. And if you have anxiety or depression, they're the messengers you need to learn to come out of the survival state, right? If you do that, your relationships with yourself, obviously, with everything, with your job, with the people around you, with your career in general, everything will improve. Absolutely every area of your life, because your life happens from inside out. So your external life, people around you, how they are, it's really important how we are, and we determine that, especially under our own roof. And that's what we care about. So your nervous system doesn't really care about your neighbor, unless it's your friend. But it doesn't. We care about people we care about. And we get triggered or calm by being in the presence of people who we care about. Very rarely, unless you're 14, which I'm assuming you're not, you get triggered by absolutely everything. And more often than not, it's a tantrum. But we're not going to go into this. So as I said, it's very important to know your predominant state in real time. Okay, we're not going to talk about the situation where something happens at work and you really get upset. Then obviously allow yourself to have a response you have. That's very important, to actually know that it's natural to be upset. It's okay to be pissed off. Let me just process that. Your nervous system metabolizes things for you all the time. So just allowing yourself and not suppressing it. Because you will get defensive anyway. When people trying to suppress their natural reactions, their anger, the love, sometimes, they love something, but they won't get close because it's dangerous, or they won't take a risk, etc. It's going to come out because human beings, you're a social animal. So you get alive, even if you're an introverted person, you get alive in the presence of other nervous systems. Not 150 of them, but several of them. There are different estimates, but we haven't been programmed to be friends with 150 people. When it comes to friends on Facebook and things like this, on any social media, we're not programmed to be involved in that many relationships, and we're not programmed to get involved in all this, hence the overwhelm that is actually creating the stress response. So going back to the predominant state. So extremes out, I'm talking about, you know how to achieve the green, or you know how to go towards it. Pay attention to your state and then communicate or interact with people when you are able to achieve a form of green. If you want to say something, if you want to communicate something, and obviously there's a degree to the importance of the information, of the something you want to express, etc. But know this, like in survival mode, your authentic voice, your values, your integrity, your decision making abilities, your planning and organization of thought is impaired, is altered, because as I keep on saying, your frontal lobe doesn't function properly, it's distorted, right? So the fear is running the show, the amygdala is activated. So there's no point. And when you shout or become defensive, as you know, I've heard it recently from my child, just because you talk louder doesn't mean you're going to be heard more. That stung, but that's a very good point, right? Which I said on the spot. So just remember that just because your nervous system is triggered and dysregulated, and of course you want to say something because you're driven by the survival, so you're under threat for whatever reason, your body is activated, the energy is running through the system, cortisol, adrenaline, etc. You're probably on the verge of panic attack. You're not going to achieve anything. So just remember that being in survival states also affects your relationships, affects the way you communicate. The same with the F2, which is flight. If you have a tendency when you're stressed to avoid and to shut off, to leave the room, or to disassociate, just your body being present, but you actually have left the room, then ask for some time out and again have an idea of how to achieve the green for you, right? What do you need to do to feel safe? And ask yourself whether the person you're trying to communicate, do you even want to? Because one of the first things that I've mentioned it already, but your nervous system cares. If it's your boss and your boss is, generally speaking, not a very stable person, let's say, or your friend, whatever, and you're having an argument or you trying to pull something apart and they make you triggered, there's no point. There's no point, right? Because your nervous system really doesn't care if that person is unsafe. So that's a deal breaker for your nervous system. So knowing your state and knowing how to achieve your green. When it comes to the third state, which is people pleasing, as we know, this is all about other people, right? Because people pleasers, so the fawn response of the nervous system, be everyone's friend, always say yes. These people, if you one of them or you know some of them, they're very much preoccupied with what other people are going to think about them, right? That's all that matters. Or how they're going to feel about them. And that's a survival state. That's not the authentic self. So if you're one of them, please be mindful of the fact that this doesn't support a healthy relationship. If someone wants you to be a people pleaser, that means they benefit from you being in survival state. If that person is healthy and not dysfunctional, they don't want you to do that, and if you're important to them. They want you to be thriving, and you can't be thriving when you're surviving, right? You can only be thriving in the green mode. When you're in survival, you can't be your true self. You can't express yourself truly. You can't say no. As we know, people pleasers will always say yes. They overload themselves with things they're doing for others at the office and managing it. So they're codependent. You are codependent. You're depending on other people's moods and what they're going to think or do. And that's not a good place to be. In itself, survival state doesn't support a good relationship. Right? And then we have the freeze, which is not a fully sort of developed state, but some people do. As I said, it's a form of ADHD, and some people live there all the time, scattered, stop and start. It's a very disassociated state. So if you're there, again, you need to know how to achieve the green, right? So hopefully you've identified the ways in which you can actually get out of that state, because it's not your trait, it's your state. So whether you're doing through your body, movement, breath, or whatever, hopefully you have the practices by now in order for you to achieve the green. And then we have the grey state, right, which is depression. In depression, as we talked about, there's very, very little energy in your system. So hopefully you have found a way, or you're looking for ways to stimulate your nervous system by some sort of movement, by some sort of breath, where you can teach your body safety and teach your body that it doesn't have to hide, that it's safe to connect with yourself, and you don't have to hide and be in shutdown and collapse, right? Because it's a collapse of responses. Why do I talk about this in such a great detail if the bonus material is about others? Well, simply because just as you have your state, other people have their state. And knowing that state and being able to say, because it's a very easy thing to do. So being able to look at someone and say, right, they're in their survival predominant state. Right? You can literally see this very quickly. As soon as you become fluent in survival states and the green, you can see it in other people, right? And you can see it in children, like, because they change their state constantly, right? And obviously, depending on the temperament, but the people you have in your life, knowing their state, it's an absolute game changer. Because other nervous system, just as we discussed, that you have your triggers and your glimmers that are specific to you, other nervous systems can be either a trigger or a glimmer. And that will be dependent on whether they're calm, whether they're in their survival state, or whether they're in their green state. So this is really a game of unconscious communication. Until now, you have been walking around unconscious about how other people make your nervous system feel. And we keep ignoring it. We go into denial, right? But that's a separate story. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, someone can be a glimmer, someone can make you really calm. But if you live with someone, you've probably experienced a whole range of emotions, like all of the states. Unless you have no emotion and nothing can trigger you, that I doubt that's the case. Very few people I met that cannot be triggered by anything. So other nervous systems can impact one another, they influence one another, and they communicate, right? So when you trying to have a good relationship, I'm assuming, first of all, again, their nervous system, the person in front of you, your spouse, your child, whatever. Maybe let's not talk about children at this point, but your spouse, their nervous system, is trying to work out where you are. Are you a threat? Or are you a glimmer? Can they get close? Or can they not? The same thing your nervous system is doing. Right? And it's already happening. So don't worry, you're probably thinking, oh my God, so much to think about. Listen, it's already happening. It's about being aware. It's about being conscious what's going on. You're already doing it. You already have the relationship, or you're going to build a relationship. Just imagine if you knew what you know now 10, 15 years ago. Like, I wish I knew. This is the insight knowledge that when people master, and certainly when I understood this, it wasn't about the relationship of the minds. It wasn't. It was something about the nervous system where with some people I would have a great relationship because that's exactly what I needed. And the same with me. I would be loved or hated because very, very few people are neutral. Like very few people are neutral. People are not benign. Like nervous systems are not benign. It's the same like when you look at dogs, like this is the animal part of us, right? So a lot of communication is non-verbal. Are you safe? Can I trust you? You annoy me, you trigger me, you remind me of, obviously I'm talking about when you are scanning your environment consciously, because again, your neuroception is doing that all the time for you, right? So now you're going to be doing that consciously, and that's great because one thing is for sure, you cannot change someone else's state, right? You cannot change that. Your responsibility in this relationship is your state. And you can influence the other person with your state. So when you're calm, collected, and peaceful, the conversations you're going to have are going to be different. The arguments you're going to have are going to be very different because your nervous system is programmed in childhood for absolutely everything. That's the pattern. The way you deal with crisis, the way you argue, the way you have an argument and it gets heated. So your reactions are programmed. Your evolution and your growth comes from understanding those patterns. So when it comes to relationships, your nervous system had been programmed to behave in a certain way in terms of absolutely everything. So the way you respond to people, everything had been programmed into you. And obviously we don't think about it every day, but it had been programmed. There's a pattern in you that had been imprinted on your hard drive, which is your nervous system, when it comes to how people behave in relationships. Unfortunately, for majority of us, your nervous system, our nervous system, didn't actually have a good role model, not even one. Maybe one, maybe whatever, right? But for majority of us, the reality is that we haven't experienced calm, collected, peaceful nervous systems, right? So what had been programmed in your nervous system is going to show up in your relationships. So has your nervous system experienced a good relationship, a healthy one, a stable one, predictable one, or you've experienced chaos, unpredictability, shouting, stress when your nervous system felt unsafe in the presence of others? A very good example is how your nervous system reacts if you're a woman to men and women. What's the difference? And when you're a man, how your nervous system reacts to a game, because your parents were the first pattern that had been ingrained. So if your nervous system has learned that people always disappoint, people don't care, and if your nervous system experiences that people around you, the people who were supposed to look after you and be reliable, etc., they say they love you, but you never felt love, you will never believe words, you will never trust, right? So that's why it's very important. And a lot of relationships for the first 5 years, they go through this transformation, and they go to, because two nervous systems together, and obviously the body, the sexual life, the arguments, the difficulties, the financial struggles, and building everything, and because it's a relationship, so you're building a ship together, and you've got two nervous systems which have been through a lot, and they're obviously trying to regulate each other. So it's really important when you're dating, and if you think, what should I look for in this other person? How do they make you feel? Do they make you feel authentic, relaxed, calm, trusting, right? Because your body will tell you, is this person safe for me? And we're not looking for excited. We're not, because excitement or the chemistry is very often stress, right? So, and the same thing like when people say, oh, the spark is gone, right? Or, I don't have the same connection with my husband. Very often, your nervous system just calmed down, and you've learned to be very good friends, but people look for a thrill because your nervous system connects that with love, right? But again, that could be another separate course in the book. When it comes to being responsible for your relationship, knowing your state and knowing your partner's state and knowing your children's state, predominant states, hopefully your children are in green all the time, right? Because again, as I talk about children, I'm not going to talk about young children, but I'm going to talk about teenagers a bit. As you know, they're very triggering if you have them, just the same way you were triggering to your parents. Because very often what happens is that the way they behave towards us, we weren't allowed to, that was not acceptable for us to behave, and we read it as disrespect. As I always say to people who struggle with their relationships with teenagers, and I don't know any people who don't, it's about understanding they don't have the resources you do. And their nervous system is, if they have a tantrum or if they sort of have a meltdown, that means they feel safe with you. They're not tyrannized by you. And they're allowed to do it. But the only way you can teach your children to manage and regulate the nervous system is by being regulated yourself. Because otherwise, if you get agitated, if you get, triggered big time and you can't really suppress the emotion, like, what's the point? You're going to just trigger them more. If you don't get reactive and you choose your response and you say it in a calm manner, your nervous system is sending a message to your teenager, hey, listen, that was disrespectful, that's unacceptable, can I please ask you to say sorry, right? Which brings me to another point with your spouses, children and friends. You always communicate, especially when you're trying to have an important conversation. You always communicate when you're in green or in the form of green. You don't communicate, you don't have a serious chat when you're sick, because your nervous system has another job, sleep deprived, tired, so on Friday night, or, I don't know, in some sort of chaos, or there's lots going on. There is no communication between the nervous systems, because as you know, when you're in survival mode, the priority is different then, right? You don't even have to be in survival, but people are overtired, overstimulated, overworked, and they're trying to solve something. You are not going to be able to even express yourself properly or listen. As you know, your frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex is shut off. It's like offline. So you're not going to be able to listen and you're not going to be heard if that other person is also in survival. And you're going to trigger them if they're trying to say something and, for example, they're in green, but you get reactive and you say, or you leave the room if that's the chosen thing, or you say yes to absolutely, yes honey, I agree with you, yes of course, I'll be different, I'm sorry, yeah, which is like a lot of people pleasers do. Or you're just not present when you're in freeze, or you totally disassociated if you're depressed, or if you have your depression sort of tendencies at the very moment, like if they come online, right? So therefore, sorting out your state and learning what is the form of green and learning how to get into green is absolutely crucial in relationships. So depending on the state you are in, I hope you have decided on and started practicing your glimmers, right? What kind of music it is, what kind of routine it is, what kind of breath work it is, what kind of movement it is, right? You need to let your nervous system know that you are safe. So the biggest takeaway from this, I want you to be able to know that you are acting out your state, whatever that is. If you are shut off, you're showing this to your partner or to your child, and their nervous system is feeling this, right? And if you think this is very good, and I believe it was a game changer for me, and I believe this is like a groundbreaking insight, show it to your partner, show this training to your partner. A lot of people struggle communicating things. I've heard it a lot in the therapy room. Oh, he's not going to listen, or she knows the best, or, I keep on saying to my wife that, but, she says this. Women are very good at diagnosing their partners. Oh, he's this because his father was this. Well, we all been through shit. But The protocol, whether you've been traumatized by your father, mother, you've been sexually abused, whatever, it's to address it here and now and to start where you are. And there are only few things that cannot be changed in terms of there are deal breakers between people in terms of there's no going back. But if your relationship, and especially with your children, there's no situation in which you can't work on your relationship. The difference between the relationship with your child and your spouse is that with your child, it's 100% your responsibility because they can't be accountable for themselves yet, and they are adults in the making and they have no resources and capacity because their brain is not developed, fully developed, until the age of 25. And that's very different to your partner who is an adult, and this is where you can actually take responsibility for your 100%, but it's another nervous system in question here, and the way you overlap, that's the bit you're both responsible 100% for. And if you want to work on your relationship, on your communication, on your future, because that's what we're talking about here, right? It doesn't matter what happened in the past. You need to get on the same page. So please show it to your partner and sit down and try and make sure that you understand roughly where you are and try and sort of create a code for yourself. Can you talk? Are you okay to talk? Not now, I'm too tired to this, right? Because people very often, like, they keep calling each other, they keep, demanding that this thing will be resolved on the spot now. But that doesn't work like that because your nervous system operates on a different wavelength. Any sort of communication, growth, looking together into the future, you need to be on the same page roughly, right? And that cannot happen randomly and will not happen randomly unless you're very, very, very lucky and you have a partner who doesn't need to work on themselves. And if you're very lucky and you don't need to work on yourself, the reality is we all have some work to do, and it does show up in relationships because we're social beings. And any work can be done, right? But you need two people for that. So you can't influence the other person. You can invite them with this sort of framework where you talk about your nervous system, where you talk about your needs, and when you can actually say, listen, you can say it to your boss even, you can say it to your friends. Stop sending me messages at 11 o'clock. I don't appreciate it because it makes me nervous when I see the notification. Like, people do a lot of things, right? And you can say to your partner, when you have something important to say, can we talk about it on Sunday morning when I feel the best in the week, and if it's important, even about the kids, or, but people bombard each other with this shit and they're triggering each other constantly, and they're very reactive, as I said. There's no plan to this. So create a code for yourself, okay? There is no personal space today. Like, we get interrupted and overstimulated constantly. So think about your nervous system, stabilize yourself, achieve the green, and think about their nervous system. And ask the same of your partner. Because as soon as they go into express, okay, to calm down or to be present, because when you're in survival, you're not present, right? There's nobody home, the shop is closed, you're only reactive and you're reacting from unconscious script. If your partner says, for me to be present and for me to be able to listen to you, I need to have 15 minutes after work for a shower and a quick bite or a tea or whatever. Honor it, like, respect it. And then you can actually bring yourself closer and your relationship will be improved dramatically. And obviously you cannot expect of yourself to just hear something once and be able to do it. It's all about practicing. It's all about making different choices and learning to make different choices and being in sort of this autonomous mode when it comes to your nervous system. Understanding your nervous system, that it's working for you, it's protecting you, and you need to work in collaboration with your nervous system. So thank you very much. I hope you like the material. Listen to it as many times as you need. Have it on repeat. Presence, ladder, practice. If you sort of get lost again and get reactive, have a big blow up, don't worry. Begin again tomorrow. There's always another day. Think about the future, not the past. And you can really take control, and you can really create a life that you want, and like an everyday experience where you don't have to run away from. And obviously I'm talking about the personal individual thing, but this material is about relationships. You can do the same with relationships. So good luck, you got it, keep going, never give up on yourself. Thank you very much, and see you soon.